What would be the closest emotion or thought about what was happening that came into your mind?
I was scared for the safety of my family.
What else happened?
And immediately heard a very large boom that went along with that flash. And that was the one that really was unnerving. I jumped up the window and I thought, okay, is there a car light out there, or is somebody actually out there taking a picture in the front yard? There's nobody out there. It was just ominous. Something's wrong, something almost like you want to go into fight or flight mode, but there's no explanation as to why.
That was around 11 p.m., the flash of light at your window and the ominous feeling. What else happened?
Well, we did watch TV for a little bit longer. My wife fell asleep. Our 2-year-old was not sleeping well at night. He generally sleeps really well. This week he hasn't been sleeping at all. He's been in our bed for hours through the night. I don't know if it's because of the boom scaring him or whatever, but he would wake up screaming and he'd come into our room and wanted to sleep with us. It was a little bit after 4, maybe close to 4:30, where I hadn't fallen asleep yet, and again, the same thing happened. I saw a very bright flash and another boom. And this one came along with a rumble right after it as well.
What did your neighbor say that he had heard and seen?
He had heard the same thing. He didn't see any flashes, though. However, one of his buddies up in Salt Lake apparently called him or texted him, freaked out, and he had seen the same thing. So didn't know what was going on.
Had the person far away from you seen also the bright flash of light?
Yeah, he apparently was awake and saw the flash of the light.
How far is the other person that he knew who had talked with him about seeing the flash of light and hearing the boom?
He lives in Salt Lake City, about, as you're driving, almost an hour from where I'm at. It's probably 40 miles.
So that would mean that this flash and boom was covering a huge geographic area.
Oh, yeah. What I found out was that most of the people that saw it were up in Ogden. Ogden's a 2-hour drive. It's extremely far away. It's up by Hill Air Force Base. I mean, it's nowhere near where I'm at. You got to go over a couple of mountain ranges to get over there from where I'm at. As for my experience here, Thursday during the early afternoon, the same thing happened again. I heard a couple of booms, a couple of rumbles. It's almost as if whatever was making the sound was causing the ground to rumble. It was an indescribable sound. It's really hard to explain. Then Wednesday night, I had to go do an errand down to Walmart, driving down this hill, and right in front of me, but a good distance off, I would say probably about 5 miles in front of me, I see the same light that I saw on New Year's Day with my wife.
This is the orange triangle.
Yes, but it was just one orange light this time instead of the 3 in a triangle. And it came out of the cloud. It was right around sunset, just before 6. It came out of the cloud very fast and then stopped. And then when it stopped, it flared up really bright. I mean, this thing was so bright, it was easily paled any light I could see in the valley. I pulled over the side of the road very quickly. I was right next to a street light. It was brighter than that street light from my view. And it stayed that bright for about 5 seconds. And then it dimmed down again to just the orange light I had originally seen the week before. And then it started flying off to the north. So this time I pulled my camera out. While it was 5 miles away, the camera did not pick up the light at all. But I kept the video rolling. And about a minute later, the same exact thing happened. A few miles to the south of that, a light came streaking out of the clouds, stopped, flared up really bright, and then dimmed down and flew off this orange ball light that I had seen before in the same northerly direction.
When you were seeing the orange light around 6 o'clock on January 9th, brighten twice and moving fast, did it reinforce your ominous sense of war?
Yeah, it was definitely like something was going on. I couldn't tell what it was. It seemed like it was all orchestrated somehow.
And Rich, Jim Brown has seen helicopters flying low over his neighborhood, no more than 200 to 300 feet above their homes, several times since what occurred January 8th, 9th, and 10th. And he said they have been doing grid patterns, a search technique that he has seen before. And on top of that, he has seen the helicopters do a dive onto a location as many as 15 times in just a few minutes, rising up and diving, rising up and diving. and he has never, ever seen any military or helicopter activity like this over these, it's a residential area, Cedar Hills, in the 3 years that they've been here, and never before the orange lights and all of the booms. And he's not the only person who has seen helicopters come in and do grid search patterns. I've had this description in detail from a man who served in special ops, is completely familiar with flying these grid patterns, and gave me a detailed email, which I now have.
Well, I think it's weapons systems. It seems like it's covert, and I cannot ignore or can't run away from the idea that it seems like there's a clandestine black budget war, or whether it's human or non-human, I don't know. But I do believe it's like a secret war. But this is actually not a brand new phenomenon. At some point tonight, I want to share with you a story that I have from an individual who I've known for some time and is incredibly reliable. One of the most trusted people that I know, actually, who described an event that occurred that her parents experienced in the early 1980s.
I have cases going back into the 70s, isolated in Canada booms. What could be, why would there be an increase now? So go ahead.
All right. Yeah, and actually the Canadian one, there was one on a place called Bell Island in 1978. That's quite interesting. I don't know if you're thinking of that. That's an interesting one. This woman, her parents were in a place called Clayton, Georgia, and it was early 1980s, and she's, I'll just say this about her. She's extremely intelligent, very rational, and to a certain extent has been a public figure herself. Is very, very careful, I think, about presenting herself publicly. Very sophisticated individual, I guess I would say that. So she's describing how she'd interviewed her own parents a few years after this, and she said they were on a very large screened-in porch of their cabin. They had this kind of like summer cabin, and this is in summer of early 1980s. The cabin was completely surrounded by thick forest, by bushes and all that, and they had only a gravel driveway leading up to the place and other walking paths in some areas. It was a very wild area. So they're on a porch. Her father was on his hammock, and the two of them were just relaxing. And suddenly they both commented that something was very odd. They both noticed that all of the sounds that they were used to hearing as they sat on the porch, like insects buzzing and leaves rustling and birds, all little critters running around, squirrels, and even deer. All of those ambient noises totally, suddenly stopped. So there was total silence. There was no breeze, no insects making a sound, nothing moving in the woods, total eerie stillness. And they commented to each other. They were like, what's that? What's happening? And then the sound came. It was a huge, god-awful crashing sound. It was so sudden. It was so loud. The only thing they could do was look at each other. They said the sound was so loud they could not hear each other speak or yell. And they both thought like a plane or something else had crashed directly into them and that they were going to die, like right then. And then it was just gone. They were both very shaken. This is in Clayton, Georgia. One thing that she added about her parents, they had traveled around the world. Both had very responsible jobs. They were very fearless people. And she said she never saw them ever totally shaken and afraid, except when they told that story to her. There was one little follow-up to this, which I think is interesting, which is that her father later that weekend, I think, or shortly after this, found like a metal reinforced or metal PVC type of pipe that had been buried underground near the cabin. It had been dug up, and it had been absolutely shredded. He had pictures of it, but I haven't seen them. She had them. But they looked at it, and they're like, what could have shredded this? Could an animal have done this? Didn't seem like it. You couldn't really cut it with anything that anyone could think of. Her father was very much a handyman type of a guy, so he was good at building. They were all confused by it and worried. You know, just like the witness that you spoke to that we had in the last segment, who, you know, these are frightening. He said he felt like a little frightened 5-year-old boy going down in the basement and running back up. This experience also frightened these two very mature, very seasoned individuals into wondering what the hell this was. So just interesting story. I thought I'd put that out there.
And it sort of resonates to me about the work that has come through what we'll call the dragonfly drone phenomena. Mm-hmm. I started reporting about that in the context of a leaked document from a man who said that he had worked in a laboratory in Palo Alto in the mid-'80s for 4 years on extraterrestrial biological entities and technology, or their technology, and it was called the CARROT program, which was commercial application research for getting it into public copyrights, patents in the United States, but it was extraterrestrial technology, and one of the key features was invisibility. That these, they knew that these machines that they were working on or had been exposed to, the software, we'll call it, self-activating software, could engender invisibility, three-dimensional holograms that human eyes could not distinguish from the reality around us, and neutralizing gravity. Those were the three main areas that they knew that the extraterrestrial technology that they had in the lab in Palo Alto in the mid-1980s could do. And when all of these dragonfly-shaped drones, we'll call it that, began showing up about 5 years or so ago.
Yeah, 2007, I'm thinking. Is that right?
7. That's right, because January 2008 was Stephenville, Texas. What people were reporting were seeing them flicker in and out. And it was that characteristic of eyewitnesses that I was reporting that this man, Isaac, contacted me to leak these documents, saying that if he listened to the interviews and he detected that they were describing that invisibility flickering, that in his mind, based on what he had gone through in Palo Alto, is that our government might have been experimenting with some kind of a jamming device to see if, in fact, they could reveal what they knew were extraterrestrial craft in our skies. That was the thesis from which this leak named Isaac was working. If that's true, and then we jam, they become visible, people see them flicker in and out, a few photographs, more eyewitnesses than photographs, and then they disappear. And in the last 2 years come booms with flashes of light, of physical evidence again, but there's nothing that the retinas are seeing beyond orange lights. In this case, it was very important that the Cedar Hills case, they were seeing a triangle of lights. Yeah. Other people have seen orange triangle of lights, and they've all described it. This was on the East Coast as well, as the color of a pumpkin or a reddish-orange pumpkin. So people are using the same comment from East Coast to Utah. And I'll tell you another very interesting thing, because it just happened.
Well, I want to add something here. What I really admired about what you did is, first of all, you stuck with the case and you continued to investigate it. You didn't just give up and run away. You stood your ground. You continued to research this. And I will just say to anyone listening, in my view, you made this case. I think you made it very, very strong. And to people who say, well, you know, this is someone from the inside leaking disinformation. Look, there are a couple of ways someone has to understand this. One is, yes, there is disinformation that comes out. But first of all, disinformation is not the same thing as a lie. That's one thing. And secondly, there are individuals who genuinely want to leak genuine information out. And the problem that all of these people have is their own security. And so they have to be careful. And it's an unsatisfactory position as a researcher to be in when you have someone and you cannot always either reveal their identity or you can't give up who they are in one way or another.
Right, and
but that's that's life.
Right, and Isaac and I were communicating by email, was the way to do it. But if we had gotten down to the email exchange, Linda, I'd ask him, "Can I talk with you on or off the record?" He said, "If you can alter my voice, I still have family."